Welcome everybody to Friday CAFÉ. Very pleased to see you here this morning. I'm Judy Carson. I'm with the State Department of Education, working on school family community partnerships. I'm here with my colleague, Betsy Laborious, who's the director of the Statewide Family Engagement Center. And also this morning with us is Ann Henderson, who is a national consultant. She's working closely with Connecticut's statewide Family Engagement Center. So we're pleased to be bringing this conversation to you today, focusing on summer learning and the coming school year and how we're engaging families' voices in those decisions and plans that are happening at the district level right now. I want to turn it over to Betsy Laborious, who's going to lead us through today's discussion and let us know the perspective we're going to be using to look at this. And I'll give you a hint. Betsy in her other life is an artist, and she is one of the most creative people I know. So you may hear a little bit of that coming through. So Betsy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. So yes, I hope I'm not going to push the point too much, but I'm very excited about today in terms of our topic is really about reimagining. So this is our agenda. So this is our menu, and we're going to put different things on the plate. Judy did the welcome, but I certainly want to welcome everyone here. A lot of people come from other states, because our Friday CAFÉ is now available to my other colleagues who are directors of family engagement centers nationally. And it's a something for others. I want you to know about that. So if you're from another state, we welcome you. And of course, we welcome new members and also our faithful gathering who attend on an ongoing basis. Thank you. Before we really start, I do want to thank a few people because without their help, we're not able to really get into what we need to do as far as today. So I do want to thank Laura Mark Claudio. She is the puppeteer who's doing a lot of the stuff and admitting people and has been always done outstanding work on behalf of CREC and also family engagement. But I also want to thank and recognize Ann Henderson, who is here with us. Ann is from Washington, D.C., and has been our mentor, thought leader in Connecticut. We are very, very lucky to have Ann, and we definitely value not only her thoughts, but her ability to bring from nationally her ideas about family engagement. I also want to thank Reagan Allen and Amy Arbor, our facilitators. I was sharing with them earlier this morning, when I reached out and asked, do you think that you could be facilitators? You know what they said? Yes. Those are the most wonderful words to hear when we talk about getting together. So this is our agenda, really. We're going to do a little bit about reimagining. That's our focus today. I have a very short video that I think that you will find very interesting around really creativity and reimagining how we can work together and how we can build different kinds of programs or systems, or even the way that we tend to work with each other. We're going to give you time in breakout sessions and choices about where you would like to go in terms of breakout sessions. Today, usually we have a conversation catalyst. Guess what? Today you are the conversation catalyst. Our community is our conversation catalyst. And then we're going to come back, and Anna's going to help us to really kind of share some new ideas. And as Judy said, this is important times because people are really thinking about new and different ways. And it is so interesting. We've all had different experiences, right? And we probably thought we were experts, very good experts in our own field. But here comes the pandemic, and guess what? We're beginners. We're starting to learn new things. That's both good and that's both bad, can be challenging for people in terms of new ideas. So our usual way of doing things may not work, either during the summer or and when we enter in September. Maybe we have to rethink the way that we do things. And so today I'm going to really push on everyone to really think about reimagining the ways that we may be doing things. I know you have wonderful ideas. I just know it, and we want to hear them. So when we talk about reimagining, right, the word comes from the Latin word novus, which means new. To imagine again, to form a new concept, to recreate. There are other synonyms for this: redefine, reevaluate, rethink, restudy, amend. These all kind of require us to kind of stop and think about, are there different ways that we can look at the work that we're doing, and that is whether you're a family member. So we're talking about systems. Families are systems, schools are systems, state departments are systems, community agencies are systems. So we're really thinking about, are there new ways that we can, again, kind of think a little bit differently? And what we really know is that Friday CAFÉ is probably the perfect place for this to happen, right? We started a long time ago, but the idea was to create a safe environment for people who are, for people who wanted to learn more about family engagement, and for people who were working in the field of family engagement. Again, whether you were a family member, whether you were someone from school, the idea was that we would create innovative spaces for new thinking. And so we think that Friday CAFÉ is the perfect place, and you are the perfect people to discuss kind of taking these, perhaps these healthy risks in terms of new ideas. So I'm going to play a very short video.
Imagine you are hungry and all you have at home is a coconut, some rice and an egg. If you have no clue and zero creative thoughts, you'd probably eat the raw egg with unboiled hard rice while staring at the coconut. If, however, you have memories of your dad cracking the coconut and your mum boiling the rice, your brain can connect the dots and form a new creative idea. You boil the rice in coconut water, then fry it with the egg and add coconut flakes. Voila! Enjoy your meal. Creativity is our ability to look at a problem and come up with a good solution to solve it. Once we understand this, we realize that it has nothing to do with the subject matter, job, or what we study. There are creative inventors and creative artists, but there are also very creative cleaners and highly creative teachers. People we worship for their creativity often just connect different ideas in a beautiful new way and make them commercially successful. While all of us are creative, we differ in the way that we are and to what extent. Michael Keaton came up with the adaptation innovation theory. He believes that when we solve problems, we are either more adaptive or more innovative. People who are more adaptive creative try to do things better. People who are more innovative creative try to do things differently. To solve a specific problem, say that of smelly cat litter, both types would use a different approach. More adaptive types look for a solution inside the box. They might try to create better cat litter by looking at its chemical properties, then increase the size of the sand particles and finally add some refreshing tropical scent. More innovative creatives think outside the litter box. They come up with cat diapers, cat schools for good manners, or a robo-cat. But there are also other differences. Psychologist J.P. Guilford and some others argue that there is divergent and convergent thinking. More divergent thinkers are better at coming up with lots of ideas when they see a problem. Convergent thinkers see all the details and are better at narrowing down the options. A diverse team is hence usually most effective when trying to solve problems. A divergent thinker can list many ideas. After, a convergent thinker can then look at each option in detail and then pick the best one. The result is better than if anyone would do it by themselves. A murder mystery experiment involving 2 groups of students shows how creative diversity works. Group A was full of students from the same background. Group B was also all similar, but joined by one single stranger. The students from Group A enjoyed the process and felt like they worked together very well. The students in Group B didn't like having a stranger in their team, but they solved the mystery twice as fast and won the race. The researchers concluded that the stranger added a new perspective, making the group think harder and making them more careful of drawing fast conclusions or falling into group think. The result was a more intelligent problem-solving process. If we want to become more creative, we first have to build a collection of knowledge and memories, ideally by seeking new experiences. Only then can we increase the dots in our brain that we can connect. Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School recommends that parents should fix things at home all by themselves. Their children then learn that problems can be solved by ourselves and in many different ways. Jack Matson, professor of creativity at Penn State University, recommends to dress for failure. This gives us a new perspective and the ability to play new roles. Mark Schvinn, founder of Minute Videos, suggests practicing saying yes, because whenever we say yes, we open the door to new experiences. Can you help me? Want to try my ice cream? Can I talk to you? Yes, yes, yes. We recommend you do one thing you have never done before every day for at least 1 week, maybe a month. Call your weird aunt, talk to a stranger, eat using your left hand, or take a really cold shower. Every evening, write down what you did and what you've learned from it. Start with the first new thing right now and share your experience in the comments below right after.
My first reaction was when they said to do something new every day was, I guess I've been so constrained these past few months, I couldn't think of anything new to do except go out without my mask on. Did anyone find that they were either a divergent or convergent thinker? Who was
Yes, I did. I was trying to think about what group I fit in.
and what did you conclude?
I didn't really. It was hard because there are some ways I'd like to think that I'm a little bit of both, but that might be thinking rather highly of my abilities. But I could see coming up with lots of ideas, but also once you narrow down one, and maybe I'm not always good at the narrowing down part, but then also looking at the details moving forward.
Yeah, I sort of had that same reaction. And then there were adapters versus innovators.
I liked the video just in the sense that I felt like it allowed me that opportunity to potentially choose how to think versus feeling stuck in one. It was like, oh, right. Oh, that's exactly, the one with the example with the cat and the cat litter and the diapers. I was also chuckling a lot. I was chuckling a lot with it. I thought it was very light, but very clear about different ways of thinking and how it works together.
I was thinking modeling even for my kids. Like I'm thinking about my middle school daughter. Like she always wants to just be with the same people. And that's like the easy part. So, I think Janice put it in the chat, yes, it might be easier, but you're not going to be faster or come up with such a good, so we need to model for our kids that sometimes they have to not think what they're find creativity, not the way that they're used to.
Right. And I think with kids, sometimes they're oriented toward coming up with the right answer or pleasing other people rather than thinking for themselves, which is something our schools need to work on too, isn't it? Rather than just, regurgitating back what they've learned, thinking about it in a creative way and coming up with a new perspective. It's like our brain is a muscle and we have to exercise it, or we fall into I liked your insight about how sometimes you're one way and sometimes the other. Sometimes I'm divergent and sometimes I'm convergent. I think, if I understand what they mean exactly.
One of the things that I thought about and I think about a lot, I really love that idea about, it's really, it's very pleasing and it, to be in groups of like-minded people and people that you know and like. But sometimes that study that talked about like-minded people who like each other, and the problem, putting a person in there that people didn't know with a different perspective really challenged people in terms of their thinking and having new ideas. And for me, that really has that's really looked at a lot of the times as institutions, as teachers, as schools. What we do is we tend to kind of gather everyone together without a lot of different perspective in terms of when we're beginning to plan and develop programs. And so for me, when we look at family engagement, the most obvious, right, part is that where are the families, or where are the students, or where are the community agencies, or where's the faith community, that if they were sitting around this table, they would challenge my thinking and they would make me maybe just take a different course in terms of what I would do. And so I don't know if anyone else has ever felt that way.
That's why I love doing focus groups with families, because they come up with stuff I would never think of. And it really makes me think. And I think that's what we mean when we talk about parent voice, isn't it?
Yes.
Hearing parent voice.
And also student voice, right, Ann? I mean, we're talking about student voice, and that's one of the things that's one of the, the breakout sessions that we'll be looking at. So we developed 4 different breakout sessions for people to think about, and it's going to be your choice in terms of the breakout sessions. But one of them is around, middle and high school students, that secondary period. And the reason that we picked the discussion groups is because we really used our Connecticut Family Advisory Council in terms of some of the topics. And that represented stakeholders in the state, represented parents. What were the topics right now that are really on the minds of both schools and families? And one of them was really about high school and middle school students. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to give you some time to, so here are let me go back to the questions. Where are my questions? Here. Okay, so here are the breakout rooms that you can choose to go in, and Glorimar is going to help to kind of situate you in each of the rooms. The first one is summer learning, and what we'd like you to do is kind of think about it in the context, again, of family engagement. So summer learning, what does that mean? What does that mean for students and families? And there are specific questions we're going to ask you to think about. Summer school in September. September school opening. What will that look like? What are some of the issues? And what is your thinking about September and when school opens? Missing middle and high school students. That's been a real concern of folks in our state. In terms of chronic absenteeism and just even young people just withdrawing a little bit and then mental health needs. This has been a major, whether it's social, emotional, or mental health needs that that our young people and our families, and quite honestly, our teachers are dealing with as we begin to kind of look at what we've been doing in the pandemic. As we said before, we know honestly that there are, we know kind of the conditions, right? We don't know all the answers right now, but we do know that there is some loss of learning, and there are gaps in terms of for fragile families and families of color, that there are technology issues out there, that there are social emotional needs. I'm just kind of doing a few access to technology and access to school personnel as far as communication. But for some people, things are going okay. For some people, it is okay. And but we know for everyone, there's been a disruption, right? A disruption in how we're meeting families and student needs.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about is what happened in your group. You know, what did you talk about? Did you come up with some new ideas? And we'll take about 5 minutes for each group. And I hope each group picked somebody. We were a little slow in our group to pick a note taker and pick somebody who was going to report out. But I'm going to ask the summer learning group, and Betsy, that was your group, who decided to report out in your group. Betsy, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute. So let's see, where are you?
I think that was me, Betsy. Yep.
Robin is probably one of the most knowledgeable people when I go to things about weather from Wethersfield, and she's going to be our reporter here. Let's take good notes. Thank you, team one.
I think the one thing that came out of ours was just include parents. So we talked about what happened in the past, and that in most districts, summer school was scheduled around children with special needs or children who needed academic help. In a lot of districts, this year is going to be around having fun and letting kids be kids, engaging community partners, getting them outside. Some districts are still worrying, about remediating loss, but we talked about Zoom exhaustion, and kids just need to have fun. But I know at least in Wethersfield, the missing piece, and I had said Betsy trained me well, is when you're designing your programs, are you asking parents or are you engaging families? So making sure families are engaged, not only in the creation process, but once the programs are up and running, what are your kids learning, and how can you support that at home? What would we like to see happen? There was some talk about kindergartners and little ones who didn't have any pre-K and what we can do to help them. And New Haven had shared about their Title I Parent Academy that happens every year. This year, they're going to be doing it virtually, but we talked a little bit about how we can not only get kids ready, but how we can work with parents over the summer to support their kids' learning. Carla from the Open Choice program talked about how they have recorded trainings and workshops and a YouTube channel, and we posted the link to the YouTube channel in our notes. And one of the nicest ideas was videos that were created by students, so to get them ready for the fall. So what does the day in the life of a middle schooler look like? What does a day in the life of a high schooler look like? And someone said, let's add a video about what is the day in the life of a kindergartner. So I would just like to add that I like Friday CAFÉ because I learned from everyone else. And I think we should share what we've done, all of our work, and why recreate the wheel if someone has a model that works. So reach out to your people, and we can learn from each other. So thank you.
I just want to say that Kim had shared something, and everyone in the group wanted to know about it. So Kim, you might just want to.
Yeah, so Weathersfield has always had a large portion of kids that don't go to preschool. We don't have Head Start. We don't have family resource centers. We don't qualify for school readiness. So 5 years ago, we started a transition to kindergarten program for little guys who have never had preschool. And we actually modeled that partly after West Hartford and partly after Enfield. So I said I could put my email in the chat, but I'm happy to share the curriculum, and it includes 8 hours of a parent piece. So while the kids are checking out the classroom, we have parents, and I say parents, but I also mean grandparents, aunties, moms, dads, older brothers and sisters, it doesn't matter, but the program has a requirement that someone come in with the child to learn about, how to access food resources, how to sign up for after school programs. We talk about attendance. So I'll put my email in the chat, but I'm happy to share all that information with you guys.
Wow, that's great. So do you see the district doing more of that going forward?
Yeah, what's super cool is in the past, it's been funded by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and Liberty Bank, but this is the first year that the district is paying for it. And we usually do 8 to 12 students, and this year we're targeting up to 100. So.
Okay, that's good, because kindergarten readiness is the biggest predictor of future success in school, and investing in that. And of course, parents are just vital to that. It's a great idea. The next group would be September school opening. And that was Reagan, that was your group.
Yep. So we, Linda Brazino Zeeler is going to report out for us.
Hi, everybody. So I'm parent facilitator in Stanford, and I was in the September. What happened in the past, we've kind of talked a little bit about, the difficulties and sort of like, for some, the opening felt rushed, and so that parents were giving a lot of information at the get-go, which was really hard to kind of manage and navigate. We talked about some of the great things that some schools did, like videotaping what classrooms look like, so that parents knew what to expect, what to see. We talked a little bit about just some of the challenges in trying to reopen a school, and some schools brought kids in to kind of orient them how things were going to be different in the school year, just even navigating the building, where you could find things. But I think one of the things that really came out from our conversation was this idea that what we would like to see is some more activities or reaching out, or things that happen that build trust within the community with parents. And so one of the big things was somebody shared how in a particular district, some coaching, consulting was provided for teachers to help them make welcoming phone calls at the beginning of the school year, since they couldn't come into the building, and how we all thought that was a great idea to start building those relationships with parents from the get-go, right? So can't we provide some support for teachers who might not feel comfortable? A lot of teachers don't feel comfortable sort of picking up the phone and calling. So, maybe some scripts that would help them feel more comfortable doing that, just to give them some talking points, right? We're always afraid that it's going to jump into a place we don't want when we do that opening phone call, right? So sort of, can we help navigate teachers in helping them do that? Another thing was, can we think about having a more tiered communication approach with parents that feels more personalized? So in some of the districts, a lot came down, top down from the district. But then I think parents would really appreciate hearing from their schools, personalized communication from their schools, chats with principals, coffee with the principal, something like that, so that they start connecting. For some of our parents who are newer, they don't even know the name to a face, right? So can we build some of those relationships by having parents be able to see what the principal looks like, the assistant principal, other supporting staff members, the social worker, the school psychologist, right? Because the parents not being brought in, with back to schools not being done in the typical way, we would like to see that be a change, that we start thinking about how can we shift that so that we're really building relationships with parents. And I think that was kind of really the big focus of what we spoke about was, can we rethink, how we've been doing things that involves parents and gets them to sort of be part of the process and not just like being told this is what's happened, but like be given the opportunity to ask the questions, see a face, connect with people in the building. Now that we are becoming so virtually savvy, and our parents as well, how do we leverage that, right? So that we are really thinking ahead about planning those activities and not being secondhand or afterthoughts for us as we reopen in September or fully come back in September.
Wow, that sounds like a very deep and rich conversation. Does anyone else from that group want to weigh in on that?
I'll just pop in and say, I did put something in the chat box. We decided to use welcome phone calls in the schools that I am in this last year, and it was new. And I bumped up some things that are available from Flamboyant. There's a guide that they have. I put the link in the chat box. Feel free to use that as a great starting place if you're interested in doing that next year.
All right. Yeah, they've come up with some terrific stuff at Flamboyant Foundation. That's right here in my backyard in Washington, D.C. Thank you. I think we're seeing some themes developing here about listening to families, welcoming them, making them feel part of the process and really listening. It's one thing to welcome them. It's another thing to then take that next step of listening. And then the next step is actually doing some of the things that they request or recommend.
I would like to say, I was with that group. This is Lindsley Gay from New Haven with the Family Resource Center at Brendan Rogers School. And I think our secretary summed up everything very nicely. But one thing I wanted to add was that welcoming the parent. I would just want schools to have a team to really think about that as a positive and put together that team. As someone just said, writing that script. I think they miss the opportunity when they just kind of usher the kids in, usher the families in, but don't have an opportunity to have that phone call or welcome group or some type of, and now that we're doing things on Zoom, having that big welcoming celebration or something. There's so many opportunities, but they got to think out the box and become creative. And then you set the perimeters for what's going to go on for the rest of the year.
Oh, Lindsley, that was terrific. Thank you. Another thing that's really coming through to me is the vital importance of family resource centers and all the things that they do to connect to and support families and be a cultural broker between the community and the staff and the school. And I'm sure that schools that had FRCs the schools and their families fared much better. And that should be something we do more investing in. I also love that idea of celebrating. We're going to be going back to school. Wow. Let's, woohoo. Let's make that a happy occasion for kids. The next group is the missing middle and high school students. I was in that group, and I deputized Amanda to report out on what we talked about. It was interesting because about half the people there were just plunked in and were tended to deal with younger students, but we decided that they would be, the new people in the room to think about the middle and high school issues. So Amanda?
Yeah, I can try and summarize a lot of what our group had talked about. And we kind of reiterated some of the themes that came from other groups that, parents really know what their families need and kids know what they need for themselves. So the school may think that, to solve an attendance issue, the best solution would be to send a truancy officer to the house. And a lot of times if you simply call home, you text, you do that personalized communication to the home, you can find out what the barriers are to them not being in middle school, them not being in high school. A lot of times it's not that they don't want to be there, There might be a childcare issue where they're watching, younger siblings at home. So it's really making that personalized connection. And we talked too that it doesn't always have to have that negative connotation, that you can do once a month, that everybody in Power School, they get a call from somebody that works in the school. That can be a paraeducator, somebody in the Family Resource Center. And then also looking at the connections that students might have within their school system. They might have a personal relationship with a faith-based mentor, somebody in the Family Resource Center, a duty aide in the lunchroom that may be able to give a real insight into that family and what's going on at home.
Absolutely. Tell them a little bit more about your program in Middletown with the Power School and how that went.
So I actually work at a elementary school, but our principal made it kind of his mission in December that he was going to do December call-in check-ins at home. So the whole school came together, and even parents from our governance council came together, and we asked, would you be willing to take 10 families from Power School and do a call home? And we had a script ready for them that they would go through some questions. How are things going? What do you need? What do you think is going well? And all the information collected from the script would go into like a Google survey so we could see the data. And from doing the December check-ins, we found that childcare was really an issue. So we were able to get the school district to provide us with a bus that transported kids to the YMCA on remote days. And another thing that came out of that was we were able to partner with a local food bank, and food bags started going home on the weekends with some of our kids.
That's just terrific. And Doran, I wanted to call on you. Doran is in Bridgeport, and he's a pastor and is involved with a lot of interesting things with young people who've been in the juvenile justice system. Are you still there, Doran?
And he had to leave.
Oh, okay. Well, I took some notes from what he said. It was very interesting, talking about his work as a pastor and working with kids in the juvenile justice system and working with schools and with local community organizations. And he said, he quoted one of his members saying that until schools become places of healing, they will not be places of learning. And we have to think about how to really reach out to our students and help them fight the oppression that many of them are under and their families are under, and recognize that that's there. And for the school not to be another system of oppression, but a place of healing, of inclusion, of welcoming, as we've been saying, and that in itself will make the school a much more attractive place for our middle and high school students to want to go. We can say what's wrong with the students, as Judy pointed out in our group, we need to be asking different questions. Rather than what's wrong with you, why aren't you coming to school? We should be asking, what can we do to make this school a place you'd want to be in? How could we make it a place where you're learning what you feel you need to learn for your life and your circumstances? And so that was sort of our vision for a new way of operating after we all go back to school. And then we have the last but not least, mental health needs, and that's Amy Yarbrough facilitated that. And I know that's been a huge issue, has come up over and over again. And Amy, did you have a rich and healing discussion?
Well, we did. We had a great discussion. Rachel Allison took notes, and I'm hoping that Rachel, we didn't actually get to officially ask her, but I hope she will share those notes. We had a very an excellent conversation, and I think that Rachel can share that with you, and then we can have anybody add any comments that we may not have captured. So Rachel, would you please?
Sure, no problem. Shout out to the mental health group. We did have a nice discussion. Historically, in the past, we talked about how what were probably really mental health issues or just a lack of social emotional skills were treated as discipline issues, and kids who were having them were punished, in some cases using school resource officers and even arrest. And I think we didn't get a lot of time to talk about it, but I think we agree that most schools are moving away from that model now, thankfully, and beginning to see these issues more as the mental health issues they are, and reaching out for resources for kids rather than punishing them. Right now, we were lucky enough to have someone who recently worked for DCF, so they could confirm what Amy, we all know it, which is that kids and families are struggling a lot more right now. Rates of child abuse complaints to DCF and domestic violence complaints are up. So what we're sensing is actually happening. And at the same time, it's tricky for schools because, kids who are virtual, the services we can provide them are not great. Either the child or the family has tech issues, or I know in our school, what our social workers are finding is it's really hard to counsel kids from home, because sometimes what they want to talk about are things that are happening at home, but there are parents or other people around, so they don't feel they have the privacy to be open about those issues. So those have been big challenges. More kids needing services is a challenge. And of course, a lot of this is being exacerbated by the isolation and lack of socialization kids are getting. So, moving forward, we think we're just going to, in September, when hopefully we're all back in school, just have to be very aware of the need for empathy and to be patient with everyone, not just our students, but also, families and staff are experiencing a lot of the same things that everyone else is. So we need to be aware of them as well. And then just kind of moving forward, some bigger ideas are thinking outside the box. Using cognitive behavior counseling with families and students so they can improve their decision making and problem solving. Trying to be very purposeful, a little more intentional around mental health. So maybe, building in mental health breaks throughout the day, or some mindfulness time, or quick lessons on social emotional skills, things like that, rather than sometimes we tend to make those kind of add-ons, or it's one day, or the month, March is kindness month, but we're not really teaching the skills we need to. So being a little more intentional about that. Just obviously being aware of student communities and what they're experiencing in the community, whether it's food insecurity or violence. We need to be aware and sensitive to what kids are going through. It'd be great if we could start hiring more people of color in mental health and support roles. And since so much right now is going on through the computer, just be really aware of family tech needs, and that they might need some instruction and support around even checking emails, which is how we're really communicating, and how I know a lot of schools moving forward are making more stuff virtual and digital for some very good reasons, but we're going to need to be aware that not all families will be able to access that in the way we need them to. And that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. There were just two other pieces that I'd like to add in there. I think when you were talking about the families, I think we also addressed the piece that there's this level also when the parent has to ask the student for help with the technology, and everybody's at home. There's this sense of incompetency at times that parents are having to address, trying to be advocates for their children, trying to be that leader in their family, and yet needing that help from their children in that way. So really thinking about that, and I heard that sprinkled through all of the other sections. How do we connect with parents? How do we get at what they truly need and be able to provide it directly to them so that they can better support their children? The other piece that I just wanted to highlight, she mentioned it, but access to counseling for like the pre-K and the kindergartners, the really young kids. I mean, we think of it in terms of the middle school and the high school. There's a lot going on there, but those younger kids, the struggle right now is that to do that online is very frustrating and not very successful for many folks. But thinking about them as they're returning to school too, how are we making sure that we meet their mental health needs? And somebody put it in the chat too, is really being aware of the stigma of mental health in communities of color, and really trying to think of ways outside the box, the traditional methods of getting services to folks. So, anybody else want to add anything from our group? We had lots of great, go ahead.
I wanted to add real quick, when we were talking about the stigma, a lot of the agencies where I worked at, that was not something that was truly highlighted. And then I ended up teaching cognitive behavior tools to individuals, and I found some of the best ways, and I was actually doing it for years and not even knowing, is utilizing mental health skills and tools without directly saying, this is what I'm doing. Because when people of color hear mental health, there's automatically a barrier, a wall that goes up, and we don't want to access those kind of services. But when you start teaching an individual, whether it's the youth or the family, how to properly problem solve and making positive decisions, you're teaching them how to learn to think outside the box for themselves. And you're also teaching them, you know, mental health ways of dealing with some of the problems and the issues that they have. So finding other alternative ways without directly, you know, putting that stigma on to the families, because with this whole digital age we're going through, that's another stigma that's added on. And if you're going to say, oh, we're going to do a virtual mental health session, you're not going to have anyone log in. But if you start talking about something as simple as the video that they showed earlier about cooking, and when you're teaching somebody how to cook something, the decision making that goes on in that process, where if you don't have the recipe in front of you, what do? Let's think about the different things you can put in. Let's replace this, let's replace that. Now you apply that to your life. And when this happens, you don't have a recipe for your life, what do? So teaching skills like that, it is priceless.
It's a great idea. Great idea.
Can I add something? I feel like what Amy said about the kindergartners is so key, because I know that in the position that I've been in, I've had to help a lot of parents just in kindergarten get their kids to school. Like a lot of they don't want to come to school. They're, you know, I think their experience of what kindergarten should have been and should have felt for them, exciting, playful, interactive, has really, for a lot of them, been missing. And I see how some of the parents are feeling very concerned and worried about that their kid, even in kindergarten, already seems disengaged by, you know, just the current situation. So I think what Amy said was very key to consider, that, you know, our younger kids, we also need to be very mindful of that for our younger kids.
Good point. Good point. Paris.
And can I just ask that you put that quote by the pastor in the chat room? I like to use that one.
Isn't that good? Let me
I like to be mindful of that one.
Yes, until schools become places of healing, they will not become places of learning.
I'll put it in, Anne.
Put it in. Okay, great. I didn't get down who the quote came from. Doran knows. But it was somebody in his community who's a leader in this area.
It's actually from a book. The name of the book is Push Out.
Push Out, right. Thank you. It's been a wonderful discussion. It's been great to be with all of you today. I learned so much, lots of wonderful ideas. We were, I think, being creative. We're guilty of creative thinking.
Thank you for indulging me in terms of kind of thinking beyond the box, keep thinking beyond the box. I don't know how many people watched the launch this morning. At 5 o'clock this morning, there was a Cape Canaveral launch, and it was spectacular with women astronauts on board. So you know, this whole idea of new thinking and what can happen in the future is really important. So Judy, Judy, I'll hand it over to you now.
I think the last thing is to say thank you, everybody, and such a great conversation. And I hope we see you May 21st. We're going to be talking about culturally responsive family engagement with a couple of people from NYU who have done some remarkable work on this and made some extremely accessible tools. So we're excited to bring that to you in May. So have a wonderful rest of your day and be safe and be well. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Be safe.